Romans chapter 8, verse 7. Because the carnal mind, notice this, is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So the carnal mind is enmity. That's the idea of being an enemy. It's enmity against God. Look at me at Colossians 1:21. Colossians 1, verse 21. And you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled. So let's make sure we understand what that verse is saying. We were sometime, that's obviously referring to before we were saved. We were alienated and enemies in our minds by wicked works. So in other words, we were at enmity with God, we were opposed to him, we were alienated from him in our minds. But verse 21 says, yet now hath he reconciled. So we were lost, we were enemies, but we've now been reconciled. Praise the Lord. Look with me at Romans chapter 5, verse 10. Romans chapter 5, verse 10. For if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, so we were enemies, but we were reconciled by what Christ did on the cross for us. Now notice this, much more being reconciled, so if you're saved, you have been reconciled. It now says, we shall be saved by his life. So here's what this means. Although we have been reconciled, this very moment, we are reconciled if we've had faith in the gospel. Do we still possess the ability to walk according to the carnal mind? Yeah, that's what Romans 8 is about, right? You can walk after the flesh. As a lost person, you are at enmity with God. There's nothing that you can do to please him. The moment you believe the gospel, you're saved, you are reconciled to God. You are no longer an enemy. You were, but you aren't anymore. Okay? As a lost person, did you have a carnal mind? 100%. As a lost person, you never had anything but a carnal mind. There's nothing else you could have. As a saved person, what kind of mind do you have? Well, it depends, because you get to pick. Because you can either mind the things of the flesh, or you can mind the things of the Spirit. And if you choose to mind the things of the flesh, then according to Romans 8, what kind of mind do you have? Carnal mind. So now think about this. When you had the carnal mind as a lost person, what were you? You were at enmity with God, according to that verse. So what happens as a saved person when you then choose to have a carnal mind? Well, God's not going to take away your salvation, but are you going to be experientially at peace with him when you have a carnal mind that is enmity against God? You won't have peace in your life, and you can't because of your mindset, not because of something that God did. That's why Romans 8:7 says, because the carnal mind is enmity against God. Now, Romans 8:7 then says this, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So this tells us something about the carnal mind. It tells us something about the flesh. The flesh cannot be perfected. It cannot be improved. It cannot be trained. It cannot be subject to the law of God. What do we need to do with the flesh, with the carnal mind? Look at me at Romans 8, verse 13. Romans chapter 8, verse 13. For if ye live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. The flesh has to be mortified. it has to be put to death. Put it this way. Here's what we think. You tell me if this is true. What we think is we think it's okay to dabble a little bit in the carnal mind. We think that. You may not raise your hand and admit it, but you think that because you spend too much time there, and I'm the biggest offender, right? Because we don't take seriously enough minding the things of the Spirit. And if we took that more seriously, we would have fewer problems with the flesh. But we just don't take it as seriously as we should. I think that's just the reality of it. Look with me at Romans 8, verse 8. What all this is telling you is that your spiritual life is going to be based upon what you think. And it's going to be based upon how you control the thoughts of your mind.